Welcome to the LOMAS series on starting and managing your law practice. This segment is Technology Planning for the New Law Practice. This seminar is a production of the Florida Bar's Law Office Management Assistance Service.
Hello, welcome to Technology Planning for the New Law Practice. This is one of the Starting and Managing Your Law Practice series of CLE DVDs from the Florida Bar's Law Office Management Assistance Service. My name is Jerry Sullenberger, and I'm the Senior Practice Management Advisor with the Law Office Management Assistance Service. Perhaps you know it better as LOMAS. Our role as part of the Bar's member services is to provide advice and assistance about the non-law side of your law practice. Now, I've been a PMA for about 8 years, joining the Bar staff after 10 years as a technical consultant. I'm a certified Novell engineer and a Microsoft certified systems engineer, as well as also being a certified technical trainer. Before I began that part of my career, I was a law firm administrator in one of Florida's largest law firms for 7 years. On this DVD, I'll be talking with you about the technology aspects of starting a new law firm. Because technology is such a fluid issue and is seemingly ever-changing, we'll cover most of the topics as an overview. We'll look at some technology as a must. Some of you might even say as a necessary evil, and how it'll support your practice. And we'll look at the concept of virtual office and what that term means. We'll examine the specifics of the technology that you will need, both the must-haves and the nice-to-haves. You will want to include technology in your budgeting, so what will it cost? And we'll look at that as well. And lastly, we'll talk about trends and some of the terminology you've heard or will hear in the future as you start this process. In the old days, and it wasn't that long ago, computers on every desk were not the norm. When I became a legal administrator back in 1987, no attorney, in fact, no person in the firm had a desktop computer. Secretaries were working with proprietary word processing. They had dumb terminals on the desk, which had central processor with about 5 megabytes of hard disk storage. 5 megabytes. When we updated the storage to 10 megabytes, it cost the firm $5,000. The technician told me years later that the upgrade was simply a matter of him moving a jumper from one set of pins to another. Well, eventually we installed a few desktop computers here and there, and what we call SneakerNet came into being. SneakerNet is putting the data onto a floppy disk and walking it down the hall. Well, today, of course, networks are common, even in very small offices. So what are the fundamentals that you need to plan for? Simply put, they are the hardware, the software, and the peripheral devices, as well as the office equipment and infrastructure. As in most technology, you're going to have lots of choices when deciding what to buy. And your choices are not just on the hardware itself, but the source of that hardware. And I find that business level equipment is somewhat more robust than consumer grade machines, things that you might pick up at Best Buy or at your local Costco. My recommendation is to source your computers from industry leaders such as Dell or Hewlett-Packard and focus on their business product lines when you do so. And why do I tell you to do that? It's primarily because these manufacturers are more consistent on the quality of parts that they use when they build their business machines. And therefore, they're better suited to stand up to the day in and day out usage that an office machine will endure. So additionally, when you buy this level of computer, you're going to be able to get bundled business software at advantageous pricing. And we're going to talk more about that a little later on. The first choice you'll have to make as you look for a computer is what form factor do you want? Now, form factor refers to the physical size and configuration of the case, the computer itself. The smaller the size will impact on how easily or how much you can add components inside the computer after you buy it, as well as place limitations on what features it will have, like the number of USB ports and so forth. Now, as you begin deciding on your computer, you're going to be looking at component specifications. And let's talk about the most significant ones to consider. And this is only part of what's going to be a long list. First is the processor itself. Now, processor is the central unit in a computer that interprets the instruction and carries out the data processing. And there are two major manufacturers of processors. This is Intel and AMD. Intel dominates the market with its high-end processor technology, like the Core i series. But AMD is not far behind due to its high-performance processors, which they make available at economic price ranges. The central difference between the two is price. However, there are other differences. For laptops, for instance, battery life has proven to be longer in an Intel-powered laptop when compared to an AMD-based one. It can be as much as 40% longer in battery life. And what this means is that the Intel process is using battery power more efficiently than the AMD processor does. In your office desktop machine, I'd say either processor is going to be great. But what processor your manufacturer is offering will help dictate the decision of which manufacturer to buy from. So let's say we choose an Intel-based machine. So good, we're done, right? No, that's not quite right, because now we have to decide what model of Intel processor do we want. And you might be offered Intel Core 2 Duo series, or you might see the latest Core i series. Now, Core 2 Duo processors first made their debut in mid-2006. This is over 4 years ago. Computer manufacturers are just now starting to weed out of their lineups the Core 2 Duo processors. And the Core i processors are coming in. The Core i7, the Core i5, and the Core i3 are still pretty young in their life cycle, and they should be around for a couple of more years. Now, we all worry about buying something today and next week finding out there's something new and better the manufacturer just released. And I guess that that's sort of the nature of technology process, and there's not a lot that we're going to be able to do about that. So I think that you should be okay with a Core series processor for several more years. But there's still a model choice. If you use your computer for basic tasks, such as word processing or email, surfing the web, and so forth, the basic Core i3 processor is more than enough to handle all of that with ease. Technically, there are two main types of Core i5 processors. That's the next level. There's a dual core and a quad core processor. And do the two types of processors have similar performance? Well, actually, yes, they do in most situations. But there's going to be some differences depending upon the kind of applications that you're running. Be sure to take note of which specific i5s that you're looking at, whether it's dual or quad core. Should you buy a computer with a Core 5 processor? In most situations in an office environment, it's going to be more than enough performance to do whatever you want to do. It is a mid-range price processor, and for people who use their computer frequently and do multitasking like lawyers often do, it's a good choice. Lastly is the Core i7. Now, it also comes in two variations. And both variations of the Core i7 will offer similar performances as does the i5, but fundamentally that performance is just fast. So Should you buy the i7 processor? Well, that's going to be up to you. For most computer users, an i7 processor is far from necessary. But if you want the latest and the fastest, that's what the i7 is all about. And it's part of the never-ending tradition. Intel now already has an i9 in the wings. So when you're making your choice, you can see that there are differences between the three processors. That's obvious. And ultimately, price is going to help make the decision as to what you need. So get a computer within your budget. That's the first deciding point for you. Don't go for a high-price computer with an older Core 2 Duo processor or buy a Core 2 Quad Series processor if you can get a new processor for the same money. That's because the newer processor runs on a newer series of chipsets and consequently are going to last longer into the future, what we'd call more future-proof. Another choice that you're going to be faced with is the actual specifications of the processor. And that's classified as its clock speed, the cache size, and the front side bus speed. Front side bus is also known as the FSB. This is the means of data transfer between the system memory and the processor. The larger the number, the bigger the pipe is, and the more information that can be transferred at a time. Cache, in this case, is an area of memory actually in the CPU, and it stores pending instruction sets. Having them available on the CPU in the cache is going to speed the processing. Therefore, the more cache you have, the better it is. Simply put, the third element, which is the clock speed, indicates how fast the processor is cycling the instructions. The higher the number of these three elements, then the faster the computer will perform and the more it will cost. So as a rule of thumb, office computers don't need the fastest processor and front-side bus that's on the market. The demands placed on those computers just aren't that intensive. Random access memory, or RAM, is another component that you'll be asked to choose. Random access memory, also known as system memory, is the temporary storehouse for the data flowing to and from your computer's central processing unit. All else being equal, a system with more memory can deliver faster performance, handle more open files at once, open larger files, and work with more open applications at the same time. But it's not a matter of loading lots and lots of memory, because utilization of RAM is impacted by which operating system you're using. So let me give you an example. With a 32-bit operating system, such as a 32-bit version of Windows 7, in general, the system can utilize up to 4 gigabytes of memory. Windows 7 is also available as a 64-bit operating system. And if you have that version of the operating system running, it can utilize up to 8 gigabytes of system memory. You may be more familiar with Windows XP, which is also a 32-bit operating system. That particular operating system can only manage 2 gigabytes of RAM. So if you don't put enough RAM in a machine, then performance is going to suffer. If you overload the machine with more RAM than the operating system can manage, then your pocketbook is going to suffer. So lastly, you're going to have to choose your hard drive. The hard drive is the physical means that stores data on your computer. And this is different from memory. As we discussed earlier, memory is temporary storage. When the power is off, what's stored in memory is erased. Storage on the hard drive is permanent. For your office computer, you need about 250 gigabytes of hard drive space. Hard drive with an RPM speed of 7,200 is standard and is fine for your needs. There are faster drives today though. You might see 10,000 RPM drives or even solid state drives are now on the market. And yes, they are faster, but they're also significantly more expensive. In the specifications, as you see on the slide, the hard disk is described as 3.5 inches. 3.5 inches refers to the size of the disk platter, and this is the standard size for desktop computers. Physically smaller disks are available, but they're normally found in laptops. Another specification related to hard drives is SATA 3.0, or serial ATA. Refers to the data transfer specification. SATA 3.0 is a standard. You don't need older technology like ATA, nor do you need what's called SCSI drives in your desktop computers. Another specification related to hard drives is cache size. And cache in this case is cache on the hard drive, and again allows temporary storage of data that's waiting to be processed. The larger the cache on the hard drive, the faster the data is handed off, since it doesn't have to be retrieved from the hard disk at the time it's needed by the CPU. Now you have a feel for what choices you have. Let me talk about what I consider to be the minimum specifications if you are purchasing a new PC today. Remember, first, buy within your budget. And secondly, these are the minimum levels that I recommend when you're looking at specifications. For example, 2 GB RAM is the minimum recommended amount for Windows 7. 4 GB would be better if the budget can handle the additional cost. 8 GB is going to be a waste of your money if we're talking about 32-bit Windows 7. You selected the computer that's going to meet your needs. Now pair it up with a monitor that supports your working style. Do you like to have multiple programs running? Do you work on different items at the same time? If the answer is yes, then a larger widescreen LCD monitor will help you do that. And if the budget supports it, you could even have multiple monitors to significantly expand your desktop workspace. I recommend a 22-inch monitor, which is available in the $150 to $200 price range. If you have an old-style cathode ray tube or CRT monitor at home, take it to the recycler. They're not energy efficient and are proven to be detrimental to your eyesight. So now's a good time to talk about the software that you will need. Productivity applications such as Microsoft Office or Corel Word Perfect Office are commonly found in both law offices and your client's offices. These office suites are essential because they provide fundamental tools for production of work. For example, Microsoft Office 2010 is available in 3 versions. The Home and Student version is not intended for commercial use. Office Home and Business retails for about $280, while Office Professional retails for about $500. Now, I recommend that you purchase the Home and Business version because it contains the most often used programs: Word for word processing, Excel for spreadsheets, PowerPoint for presentations, OneNote, which is an integrated and linked note-taking program, and Outlook for calendaring, email, and to-do list. Professional Suite adds Access, which is a database program, and Publisher, which is a program which is suitable for creation of brochures and publications and so forth. Corel's Office Suite offers similar functionality. Whichever you decide to use, I strongly recommend that you purchase your Office Suite as bundled software with your new computer. Because, for instance, Dell is offering the Home and Business version along with a new computer for about a 29% discount. And the professional version is about 30% off. So it's a good idea to look closely at the software offered by the computer manufacturer, because you can get similar savings on other software packages as well. You may remember from your Practicing with Professionalism course that during the LOMAS presentation, we emphasize areas that you must pay attention to in order to manage your exposure to risk. We call these areas the key areas of practice management. And whether you're talking about conflict checking, client communications, calendaring, docket control, records management, financial management, doesn't matter. The technology that you have in place or don't have in place is going to play a crucial role in your ability to do these things effectively and efficiently. You know, over the years, a number of specialized programs have been developed specifically for lawyers. And it's a given that everybody has productivity software like Microsoft Word. However, there are some other types that lawyers should consider for their needs. And when I visit a law firm, I expect to find some form of practice management software, financial management software, document management, and document assembly software in that firm. Practice management software, or case management, and these terms have sort of become interchangeable, is a relational database which organizes all of the information it contains in relation to the client and the matter. So for example, if I enter the name and phone number of the opposing counsel in the Jones property dispute matter, then I'm going to tag that entry with the client and matter identifier. As I work, everything I put into the program is going to be related to a particular client and matter, or even several client matters. A judge, for example, might be tagged in multiple ways. The program then uses the client matter information to assemble and present what you're looking for a particular client matter that you're interested in. If it's used as designed, you and your staff are going to be entering notes, making journal entries, calendaring and recording time, tracking documents, and so forth in that program. And with practice management software, you'll also be able to do conflict checking, which is another one of those critical practice management areas. You'll be able to stay on top of client communication processes, managing your calendar and your docket. So it's a great tool, and it's one I strongly suggest you consider getting early on in your practice. The next type of software you're going to need is financial management software. If you've asked your accountant, you may have already gotten a recommendation to use QuickBooks. QuickBooks is a good general small business accounting program, but it's not one developed with the specific needs of the law firm in mind. Accountants commonly recommend the program because they work with it all the time, and so QuickBooks makes their job easy. Now, I see it as the tail wagging the dog. You need software that makes your job easier. And there are many financial programs written specifically for lawyers and law firms. And this particular slide lists several popular ones. One of the points to consider as you evaluate which to purchase is that you want integration with your practice management software. For example, Tabs 3 is developed and sold by the same company that makes Practice Master. And the two programs are one of the strongest small firm packages on the market. Practice management software has tools for contemporaneously capturing time entries as you work. For example, you might start a timer running as you begin a phone call. Then once you hang up, you simply stop the timer, type notes about the call, tag it with the appropriate client matter number, and note it as a billable entry. So all of this information is now recorded in the practice management software. At the end of the month, you export the data into the financial management software where it'll be used to generate a detailed bill to the client. So even if you don't plan to do hourly billing, tracking your time is an essential step for ethical reasons, and you cannot effectively manage your firm if you don't know how you and the people that work for you are using the time. So you have to do it, you have to track, and it's nice to have tools that make it easy to do. When you purchase a financial program designed for law firms, you're going to get a program with not only features like general ledger, time and billing management, and compliant trust account management, but also specialized law firm financial reports which help you manage the firm. And this is something that a generic program like QuickBooks doesn't bring to the table. And for your accountant, you can export data from these programs into a format the accountant can work with. A valuable tool, particularly for a solo attorney or small firm, is document assembly software. Now, this software enables the simple, quick, and accurate creation of forms or standard documents. The advantage that document assembly applications have over cutting and pasting is document consistency for our staff members. Now, you can be confident that the same documents are being used by everyone. When changes to the laws are made, all relevant documents are updated accordingly, and they're made available so everyone's still using the most current documents. This type of software is practice area specific. You must research and select software that provides support for the areas of law in which you practice. And there are two main players which I've listed on the slide, and they are different. ProDoc was purchased by Thomson Reuters West Company, and it was originally developed by a lawyer with specific focus only on practices in Texas and Florida. And West is in the process of expanding the number of states supported by the product. ProDoc and HotDocs have some fundamental differences. ProDoc maintains a staff of attorneys who write the language used in the document assembly program, and they also manage a forms database of bar and court-approved forms for the different practice areas. So in Florida, ProDoc has products for about 12 practice areas, and they draw forms and other information from the Florida Bar, the Supreme Court of Florida, all the county, circuit, and federal courts in Florida, state agencies, and so forth. On the other hand, with HotDocs, you build your own set of documents. HotDocs allows you to take things that you have developed internally and make them into document assembly elements. HotDocs is very widely used and integrates with some practice management software programs. Please keep in mind that for some practice areas, there are many alternatives for you to select from, and you will have to do the research and find the one that's right for you. As time passes and more data is stored electronically in your practice, finding a particular file becomes a search for the proverbial needle in the haystack. And you can literally waste hours tracking down one specific document hidden within a vast correspondence file. Document management software is designed to prevent this problem. Originally, it controlled only the saving and cross-referencing of documents in a word processing program. But in today's office, electronic content comes from many sources in addition to word processing. Things like email or your scanner, the electronic fax process, and so forth. Document management software is a database of document names, descriptions, keywords, and locations. And it may even do full text indexing of everything stored electronically on your office network. Ideally, it will require everyone to save through the document management process so nothing slips by. When being saved, a document profile window is going to appear. And this profile contains fields such as document names, author, client matter number, document type, and so forth. And upon completion, the document is then automatically added to the firm's document library. Document retrieval is now going to take seconds. And with full text search enabled, it's possible that you could retrieve every document with a simple reference. For example, say you want to pull up a document that had a reference to dog bite. So you can search for that term and it will bring up all the documents with that reference. This is a powerful tool, but can be expensive, and early in the life of a firm, it's probably going to be unnecessary. But there will be a time when you need to add it to your software arsenal. And if you don't buy this kind of software, you still need to manage your electronic documents by establishing standards and procedures for managing your electronic storage structure, how you name and save the electronic documents that you and your staff create. Now, LOMAS can help you with that process. So let's review where we are so far. We began with a discussion of why technology has a place in your firm and a discussion of hardware terminology. We examined what to consider when selecting a computer to purchase and gave you a minimum set of specifications as a guide. We then discussed types of software for you to consider purchasing. So at every stage, whether considering hardware or software, due diligence on your part is necessary and is going to pay dividends for you in the long run. You know, for instance, no one can tell you what practice management program is perfect for you. There are lots of choices, and you're going to research and try on for size what's available. You might not like, for example, how many clicks it takes to perform a task in one program, but love how simple that task is in another. And only you can make that call. A final critical element in the success of your technology choices is training. Training for you and training for your staff. This is an area you must budget for. And I've seen many instances of what I call shelfware rather than software. And in other words, I've been in firms with literally $15,000 of practice management software sitting on a partner's shelf, not installed, because management didn't invest in help with configuration and installation and training. I've actually heard them say that the manuals were too thick for them to deal with the problem. So what else are you going to need to set up that new office? So how about a fax machine, a phone system, an office copier, a scanner? Well, here's a list of things for you to consider. Sort of looks daunting, doesn't it? Well, keep in mind that most of us don't drive a BMW right out of college. It takes a while to get to the best of the best. So I'd set my expectations accordingly. I'd want my office to be modest, functional, clean and serviceable, and respectable looking. But also keep in mind that you don't necessarily have to have everything on this list when you open the doors the first time. So we'll try to narrow down to the minimums, but your initial budget is going to play a large part in your decision-making process. And I'm going to take you through the list item by item and add some things for you to consider. And we've already talked about computers and about what's involved in selecting a desktop computer. But here's some other considerations. Do you need a desktop or do you need a laptop? Or maybe you need both. Do you want that computer to be a PC or an Apple? Well, when we start talking about a topic like this, it's when I realize how difficult it is for a presentation like this DVD to cover everything's technology. Well, anyway, you can find advocates for either Apple Macs or for Microsoft PCs in a law office. In today's world, the Mac is more viable than ever as a law firm computer, particularly for a solo attorney. But I think that using Macs also created a bigger challenge to the firm. both in finding law firm software programs as well as finding service and support organizations for your Mac environment. And there's no doubt that Microsoft is the 800-pound gorilla in the IT world. Consequently, you're going to find more clients using Microsoft software, as will the courts be using Microsoft software. As far as what form factor you choose, desktops are highly capable performers and cost less than laptops. But if you need portability, then laptops are going to be your choice. Laptops are available with the power of desktops. They just cost more, and when configured to be as powerful as a desktop, they lose some portability. Backing up your data is one of the crucial elements of risk management in your new firm. And you got to back up your data every day. If you back up less frequently than that, then the more data is going to be lost if there's a catastrophe. For example, if you back up once a week and the computer's stolen on the night before you're scheduled to back up, then you just lost a full week's work. A second vital part of the backup process is the backup itself has to go off-site. You know, it's not just the hurricane that causes trauma. It's a totally unexpected, like a fire or a theft. If the office burns and you're not keeping your backup data off-site, then both the computer and your backup data could be lost. For business continuity, you must back up the data in some manner. And secondly, get that backup media to a safe location out of the office. I recommend using an internet-based service over a broadband connection like a cable modem or DSL line to accomplish this backup. Check out services like MozziPro.com, Iron Mountain, or Carbonite.com. And don't rule out the redundancy that uses both external backup drives and internet-based backups. If you do decide to use locally based backup media, then use more than one device and rotate the devices off-site between backups. What I really like about the internet backup service, though, is that it's a totally automated service once you get it configured. The backups take place and the data is moved off-site without you having to remember to do it. You know, I ask about backups a lot as I do consultations. And I hear, oh yeah, we do it every day. And when I ask, can I see yesterday's backup? I hear, well, we didn't do it yesterday. We had a deadline that we were trying to get out the door. Well, that's when automated processes really make good sense. You can't live without a printer. For most of what law firms produce, a desktop laser printer is the best combination of quality, performance, and value. You know, supplies are the real cost for printer operation, and both inkjet and color cartridges cost more than laser black toner does. If you start your firm with plans from the beginning to have a paperless environment, that would be a good thing. Employing quality desktop scanners, something like the Fujitsu ScanSnap, enables you and your staff to remain at your desk and still scan every incoming piece of mail when it arrives. Other quality brands that make scanners include Canon and Kodak, Xerox and Hewlett-Packard. Just factor in a good-sized hard drive to store the data which scanning produces. Network scanning is often a feature of high-end digital copiers, and it is a good feature to have for larger scan jobs, even though someone has to get up and go to the copier to use it. For day-to-day scanning of smaller documents, which will be most of the scanning your office does, I like the efficiency that comes from keeping people at their desk. And just as you can't live without a printer, you probably can't live without a copier. Eventually, you'll be answering questions about copiers like how many and how big. And big is measured by its duty cycle, or how many copies a month it will handle. You certainly don't need one when you begin that will do 35,000 copies a month. Another one is fax machines, and they provide a simple means of communications to link users around the world. You probably didn't know it, but the first fax was sent in 1842. And today, fax machines are still being used to send hard copies of documents instead of sending information via the internet. Well, unlike when you're using computers and email, hard copy originals, of course, don't need to be scanned before they're sent, nor do they need to be printed once they're received, since a fax machine does all of that for you. So the fax machine is ideal for people who don't have a computer or internet access, and it's perfect for hard documents that have signatures on them. And there are alternatives to owning a fax machine, though. Fax technology has become accessible to everyone via the internet, and online fax services provide the same benefits of using a standard fax machine, but at lower cost, and of course saves paper and can save time. A fax service can enable a user like yourself to send faxes to multiple recipients with a simple mouse click. Users can opt to send faxes to machines directly, or you can transmit them as electronic mail. Keep in mind that a hard copy original, though, would still have to be scanned into your system before you could fax it using internet fax technology. One option is a good quality laser-based multifunction machine, and I would look at that as a good choice initially. Typically, you can find one that is a printer, copier, scanner, fax. Now, generally, these machines are just okay at each task that they do. They're not great performers. And that's why I like dedicated machines, because they're generally higher performers in their specialty. But in the early stages of a startup, price outweighs performance, except possibly when we're talking about scanning. And I'm still an advocate, if your budget supports it, to buy a standalone desktop scanner. It seems that everyone owns a cell phone today. So if you do own one, my recommendation is to use the one you have, whatever kind it is. It is possible that all of your business phone needs could be handled by a cell phone number early on. But eventually you would need a telephone system if you had staff. If you need to do that at the outset, perhaps in your home office, maybe because your cell phone coverage is poor in your house, buy a simple 2-line telephone set from a supplier like Office Depot and install 2 business lines in your office. Subsequently, when necessary, you can add a second phone set if and when you add a staff member. When working from a home office, train your family members on how to answer the phone, or not answer. Another telephone technology available is Voice over Internet Protocol, VoIP, or VoIP. However, unless your practice requires a huge amount of long distance and international calling, I would not do VoIP. VoIP phone systems are expensive, and they will probably be more than you need. If you do have long distance needs, though, you can use a service through your computer system, such as Skype. Skype offers free calling when it's computer to computer, charges a small fee for calls to landline numbers. You could use wireless phones in your office, but there's always a risk of leaving them off the charging cradle and having the battery die when you need it. They're also subject to interference from time to time. Now, landlines are very reliable. All central telephone offices in the U.S. are on long-term battery backup or other alternate backup sources. So finally, if the power is out, a simple, meaning a non-electric phone set, will provide you with basic phone service. If dictation is how you work, then you'll need a dictation capability. Now, I recommend an inexpensive digital handheld. one that docks with your computer and downloads your dictation file. You can then easily send a digital file as an email attachment to a transcription service. Many transcription services provide overnight transcription and email a completed document to you the next day. Now, if you have a legal assistant who can transcribe in-house, there are some really neat software-based dictation systems on the market. The transcriptionist works with a USB foot pedal which controls the audio playback software which is on the computer. It works just like the old dictaphones used to work. There are also USB handsets available for dictating. However, these combinations are costly. When you first start your firm, you're going to have to decide, are you going to be able to afford a warm body for staff? There are technological solutions that can help with that decision as well. At the very least, you need voicemail. For a small solo office, I recommend having the voicemail service from the telephone provider, not in an in-house machine. That way, if your lines are occupied or otherwise unanswered, the caller will go to voicemail automatically. There are some impressive virtual receptionist solutions also. I know a solo practitioner whose phone is answered by a very professional receptionist whenever I call. He's in DeLand, she's in Chicago, and you'd never guess. Messages left with the receptionist are sent immediately to the lawyer's smartphone. This type of solution can help control your cost and still foster a very professional presence to your clients. So clearly you've got to have software to get your work done. Productivity software such as word processing is a given. Keep in mind though that particularly in the early stages of your startup, that all of the accepted and recommended best practice management processes and procedures were done manually for many years before computers became available. So what's important is developing and implementing the day-to-day best practices in your firm. You have to understand and be in control of how your practice does the work and manages the workflow. Then, as cash flow and resources allow, look for computer solutions to automate those established procedures. So what's important is developing and implementing the day-to-day best practices for your firm. You have to understand and be in control of how your practice does the work and manages the workflow. And then, as cash flow and resources allow, you look for computer solutions to automate these established procedures. Case management, financial management, document assembly, and document management are programs designed to facilitate practice management efforts. Case management computerizes processes like calendaring and contact management, organization of your client matter information, and so forth. You need financial management for both your operational and trust account activities. You need to know what you're making and where you're spending your money. Equally important is timely and effective billing and collections. Trust accounting is one of the most sensitive areas. If you have fewer than 25 transactions per month, then you can easily manage your trust account using a manual paper-based system. If you're busier than that, or have multiple trust accounts, then it's time to automate your trust accounting procedures. Document assembly software is generally practice area specific and helps produce routine forms and documents. There are other practice-specific software that may be available, and those will depend upon what you do. Another factor that may affect your software choices is the availability of software as a service, which is called SaaS, or cloud computing. And this is where the application and the hardware itself is being provided by an internet-based company. Since there are so many possibilities, contact the LOMAS Practice Management Advisor to discuss options when you're at the software acquisition stage. One question that often comes up is, do I need a server? Well, the short answer for the solo startup is probably not. But that is not to say you don't need to have your computer's network. So let's talk about that some. A server is a piece of hardware and an operating system specifically designed to hold, manage, and send and process data. The technology in a true server machine makes it more reliable than desktop systems. And they also come in different form factors, as the slide shows. From a tower server that externally doesn't look much different from a desktop PC, to rack mount devices, and the latest development, the blade server, which packs the server into a very small space. When you buy a server, you get a machine that has the capability to process data faster and more efficiently, along with built-in redundancies to handle component failures and keep the data available. Servers also can support data backup and increase security on your network. In general terms, a server is much more than a souped-up desktop system, and it can't be replaced by one. Desktop systems are optimized to run user-friendly operating systems, desktop applications, and facilitate other desktop-type tasks. So even if a desktop sports the same processor speed, memory, and hard disk space as a server, they aren't the same because they're engineered for different usage. If your office only has 3 or 4 staff members who share files across network computers and surf the web and send email, you probably don't need a server at all. However, once you have 5 or more employees working together on a network, a server can provide a central location for your important files, shared applications, and other resources that you regularly use, like client documents or a forms library. You still need a network infrastructure in your office. When all the elements of your technology are networked, even if you have a home-based office, you gain significant advantages. A network enables you to share resources, and with today's technology, that's an important benefit. Networks can be configured based on a client-server method, which I've suggested you probably don't need at this stage, or as peer-to-peer networks. In a peer-to-peer network, computers on the network can still share files, share printers and other peripheral devices, and take advantage of programs designed for multiple user access, like a practice management program, for instance, and have access to the internet. To establish a network, though, you need infrastructure. In other words, you need the pieces that make it work. When you set up your office network, the first decision is, will it be wireless or wired? And there are pros and cons for each, but I generally am a fan of wired networks. And Ethernet cabling may already be in the office space you're renting or can easily be installed at home. The wired environment can handle more data faster and is more secure than wireless. Wireless, on the other hand, is simple to install, no cables required, but is more difficult to secure. Whichever way you're leaning, I strongly recommend that you hire a trained computer networking technician to install and configure your network. Such a person will understand and be able to establish the security that you need on your network. For a small office or home network, you need only a few basic components. Most PCs and laptops sold today come with network interface capability embedded on the motherboard or as an installed network interface card or with wireless capability. Now that is something to make sure you specify when purchasing your new computer. If you already have a desktop and it doesn't have a NIC, then you add one for about 50 bucks. If you have an older laptop without wireless or a hardwired NIC capability, talk with your tech support person because there are USB devices you can use for connectivity. You also need an Ethernet switch. These come in a variety of sizes based on the number of ports on the switch. Each port supports one computer. The Ethernet switch is often built into the next component required, which is the gateway router, usually capable of supporting about 4 devices. So if the 4 ports on the router is sufficient for your office, you can skip buying a separate switch. The third component, as I said, is the gateway router. This device manages the flow of data between devices on your home's local area network and is responsible for routing the home network traffic towards the internet. It's what facilitates the internet connection sharing. An added security benefit by hiding your internal local area network from the internet, and in effect provides firewall protection from internet attacks. Lastly, you will need enough Ethernet cables to connect each computer or network device to the switch ports. You'll need 1 cable per device. The physical setup of a wired Ethernet network requires a cable from each computer to a port of the switch. If you're hiring someone to pull the cable through the drop ceilings and through the walls of your office and then properly terminate and test each of those cable runs, labor and materials can be expensive. On the other hand, in a 1-room home office or small office, the cable runs are simply off-the-shelf purchases of cable in sufficient length, already terminated, and then run along the baseboard. Expense is limited to the cable purchase only. The equipment requirements for wireless installations are easy, as you can see. Setup of wireless network is also significantly easier because there are no lengthy cable runs. You do have to worry about signal strength, and in some cases you might have a single cable run which supports a wireless access point device that extends the signal coverage in your office or home. In some circumstances, you might have a combination network with both wired Ethernet in place and a wireless access point as well. Keep in mind that security in the combination network is only as tight as the wireless lets it be. Here's a rough idea of what it's going to cost to set up networking. Do you need the network? Well, without question, the answer is yes. It is possible to set up a direct connection to the internet from a single computer. However, if you do that, you're placing the computer directly on the internet and you're making it open to internet attack. When your computers are on a local area network and the network is connected to the internet through a router, the router serves to place a physical firewall between your computer, your data, and the internet bad boys. So even if you have only 1 computer and you plan on connecting it to the internet, I strongly recommend that you invest in a gateway router and configure a network simply to gain the additional security protection that provides. It's important that you develop a technology budget when planning for your startup. Having a budget will guide you as you make decisions about what you're going to purchase. Now here's what I think you could reasonably expect to start an office with. Assuming that you don't have anything, this graphic shows what I consider to be the minimum technology you need to start your firm as a solo. Of course, anything you already own that is serviceable you can remove from the list. If you have a working cell phone, for instance, you don't need to rush out and spend $299 on an iPhone 4. Upgrade later. The same can be said for the laptop that got you through school. Put it to work. But if you buy everything, then I estimate you would need to budget around $3,000 at the beginning. This is bare bones, entry-level list. There are other cost-saving methods as well. There are many firms that are cutting back on personnel and downsizing operations. You can look there for used equipment to fit your needs and your budget. Check with your local bar association for want ads or items for sale. You know, in some areas, Goodwill is refurbishing computer equipment for resale, and the computers are often donated by businesses. So it is possible that such a purchase would get you technology hardware suitable for your first year or so. Another way to cut expenses is to purchase refurbished computer equipment from Dell or from HP. These are often returns that have nothing wrong with them. The manufacturer can't resell them as new items, and you might get a first-class bargain as a result. So buy business-level hardware, but refurbished equipment will come with a warranty and probably be preloaded with operating systems and even productivity software like Microsoft Office. The computers might have a scratch or two, but they will have been tested by the factory. Another question is, do you purchase or lease? For a large system and some types of equipment, like a large office copier, for example, leasing does make good sense. A good rule of thumb is if it's an item with a useful life of more than 5 years, then finance it and purchase it. If it has less than 5-year lifespan, lease it. Generally, desktop computers and laptops are on a 3-year replacement cycle. Server hardware is on a 4 or maybe even 5-year life cycle. Major office equipment like copiers might be replaced as frequently as every 2 years under heavy use. Talk with your CPA about which of these is better from a tax advantage standpoint. Many computer-related purchases can be expensed in the year bought rather than amortized over several years. You'll need good tax advice about that. As a solo, you're going to be purchasing small quantities. In other words, 1s and 2s of equipment. So leasing might not be a good fit. And if you're buying refurbished equipment, you may not find these available on lease. There are many technology resources available to you on the web. The ABA has an excellent Legal Technology Resource Center, which publishes and blogs regularly about law firm technology. For example, they have comparison charts of case management and time and billing software. And they also have articles and other important technology issues covered, like an overview of metadata ethics opinions from around the US. Another interesting and free newsletter is called TechnoLawyer. You can find blogs about almost any topic, and if you're interested in using Macs rather than PCs, a Google search for something like Macs in the Law Office produces about 180,000 hits on that subject. As you go through your process, you can hear from your colleagues about virtual offices, cloud computing, software as a service, ASPs, ISPs, you name it. For example, what is a virtual office? Well, Wikipedia defines a virtual office as a combination of off-site, live communication and address services that allow users to reduce traditional office costs while maintaining business professionalism. Fine. More to the point, rather than lease a brick and mortar office space, you can arrange for an off-site business address that provides live staff, mail and call handling, and meeting space. Normally, if you have a virtual office arrangement like that, it's going to be done in conjunction with a home office. Now, when you set up a home office, it's going to be your principal work site, but it will probably not be where you meet your clients. Now, I've seen client meetings scheduled in library meeting rooms or borrowed or rented conference rooms from larger law firms, or even meeting spaces that come with that virtual office arrangement that you have. I've even met with attorneys in the back booth of a local restaurant. So when working from home, particularly if you have a family, I recommend setting up a separate space where you can be at the office. Have business phone lines separate from your home lines. Use a post office box address or a virtual office business address. And this, of course, is just to protect your family's privacy. Now, not everyone has the temperament to work from a home office. You might be someone who needs to get up, put on your tie, and physically go to the office. And early on, a way to do that without a significant investment in a long-term office lease would be to set up your office within a shared arrangement. Now, it's permissible to do that as covered in Ethics Opinion 88-15. But there are ethical considerations as well, such as client confidentiality concerns. Executive suites often are available, particularly in major areas, or you might rent a small office from a colleague. If you do these arrangements, they often come with shared resources like access to a copier or a fax or maybe even internet access. If we're talking about internet access, here it's crucial that you have a professional set up your computer systems. Because if you're on a shared network, it's important that you get access to the internet, but at the same time, prevent anyone else from accessing your computer's data. There are so many variables in how you organize and establish your place of business. Here's my final piece of advice. If you're a technology geek, you can burn a lot of billable time playing with your computer system, even if it's fun for you. If you're not a geek, then you can spend even more billable time trying to learn about your computer systems. Either way, I strongly recommend you hire a qualified professional to deal with your computers. Your job now is to lawyer. Let the professional tech deal with computer setup, service and support issues. Your time is better spent elsewhere. Thanks very much for your attention. Feel free to contact LOMAS as you work through your startup issues. That's why we're there. Good luck.
For more information, visit the Florida Bar's LOMAS website at www.floridabar.org/LOMAS.